Everyone, I'm Mickey Feldman-Simon. I'm the founder of I'm Back at Work. Thank you for joining us today. We're very excited to have you here. And before we get started and before I introduce you to Michelle, I would like to take a moment to make sure that you can all make the webinar panel work for you. So your webinar panel now may look like the image on the right or the image on the left. That's one is when it is closed up and the other one is when it expands. And to open and close it, you click on the orange arrow at the top and that will open and close the webinar panel. Now, we are going to have a 5-minute question session at the end where you can present all of your questions. And to open the questions area, you click on the little triangle right next to the word questions in the webinar panel. And then you can type in all of your questions in the blue rectangle just there. And we will address all of your questions at the end of the webinar. Now you can also move the webinar panel right out of the way, out of your screen, and you just click anywhere at the top and drag it out of the way. So now I would like to present Michelle Brand. Michelle is a certified professional coach with the Institute of Professional Excellence in Coaching. She is certified in delivering the Strength Deployment Inventory, MBTI, and EQ, and has a BS in Industrial Management, Business Marketing, and Computer Science from Georgia Tech. Michelle has more than 20 years of corporate and consulting experience that includes project management, training and development, online marketing, leadership, business, and executive coaching. Her specialties include career coaching, interview training, resume development, career marketing plan development, onboarding, leadership development, and career re-engineering. She is known for her strategic approach in asking questions that help clients articulate their value and differentiate themselves with confidence in their target market. Michelle is always adding to her tools and capabilities to ensure her clients get the expertise they need for their specific challenges. She is known for her heartfelt support of her clients' goals, respect for their values, and dedication to their growth. Michelle creates a powerful partnership with her clients to obtain a thorough and complete assessment to choose and go after the best career path for them. Michelle has facilitated various career development training workshops, and we welcome her here today to I'm Back at Work to help you optimize your LinkedIn profile. Now I'm going to turn off my video screen so we can concentrate on the presentation, and welcome Michelle.
Thank you, Mickey. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here with you, or for those of you that will be listening to this recording, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera so we can jump right in. Okay. So we are going to, and sorry, it skipped a slide. We are going to focus on optimizing LinkedIn. And before I jump into this, I just want to share with you that for me personally, this made a huge difference. I transitioned out of a corporate career into my own business, and being on LinkedIn and understanding how to optimize it, I was able to have a situation where someone found me, they found my profile, they were opening an office in the Charlotte area to do career search, and I got that opportunity because I was on LinkedIn. I have a client that shared with me that it was a game changer. And so that is why I'm so passionate about supporting individuals and optimizing LinkedIn. Now, keep in mind that what we're going to be talking about are these strategic actions that you will be able to take. This is not LinkedIn Basics, so I would encourage you to check out some of the other webinars that go into that, as well as LinkedIn has some videos that you can watch to help you if you haven't signed on. But these tips will help you whether you're already on LinkedIn and have a profile or not to be able to optimize. So there are reports that I recently came across that have said that 96% of recruiters are using LinkedIn to source their talent. So that's pretty high. And almost 100%, when you see that number, it makes you think, wow, use it to initially screen applicants. And I was just literally on the phone with a client the other day, and they told me that that very thing happened. They said, yep, Michelle, we ended up having some job openings and we got resumes in, and the first thing we did was go on LinkedIn. So that is why this is so important. And it really is about that first impression. It's like the virtual handshake, the first thing that individuals are going to see. So it is your professional online presence. And so it's so important that you are strategic about it, that you are effective in what you're trying to accomplish. So the top priorities to do that, and by the way, at the end, we're going to share a summary of the basically 10 tips using what I'm going to share with you in this webinar that can move you forward towards optimization. The priorities are uploading a professional photo, using keywords to optimize your findability, personalized connection invitations, and what it means to be active versus on. A professional photo on LinkedIn is so important. And I've had clients along the way that have been frustrated. Why do I have to have a photo on LinkedIn? We don't have to have one on our resumes. But if you think about LinkedIn as more of a networking tool, it's a place to show your personality. And I'm skipping down to that bullet because I want to point that out as just that first thing to think about if you immediately saw, oh, I don't want to upload a profile. But the reason is, and I've done research on this, that your chances of getting your profile open and read increases by 7 times with a photo. 7 times, and there are some estimates out there that are as high as 14. So again, think about your profile as more of a networking tool that can really show your value. Again, back to that, it is that first impression. So you want it to be positive and you want it to be clear. You want to make sure that you use a photo where you're approachable but professional at the same time, and make sure that your look, if you will, matches your personality. A photo that I had before the one I have now, I was told by a colleague that got to know me, she said, you know, Michelle, this just isn't you. This isn't the Michelle that I know. So really ensuring that, like, for example, I've had clients before say, should I smile? And I'll say, well, it depends. Is that natural for you to smile in a photo? Just be yourself. And that's going to be the best way to have a photo that really matches you. You don't want to include other individuals in your photos. This is about you. Again, back to that, this is your first impression. So make sure it's a picture just of you, okay? I had a client that when he first started working with me, we went and looked at his profile, and it was basically of him, and he was so small, you could barely see him, and behind him was this brewery. Not appropriate for LinkedIn. So we talked about that. First of all, you could barely see him, so back to that, being able to ascertain someone's personality, you really weren't able to do that. You couldn't get a good feel for him. You got to basically see a picture of a brewery. Lastly, you want to wear the type of clothes that you'd wear on the job. And nowadays, this can be tricky because environments now, some are still very professional, some are business casual. You may want to ask around a bit to get an idea. I always say that if you're not sure, dress up. The next thing to talk about is keywords. And I want to point out that even though we're talking about LinkedIn today, keep these same tips in mind when you're considering your resume. It's all about keywords now. The way that it works is recruiters are going to use words and phrases that are found in job descriptions, and they're going to do searches on LinkedIn. So let's say they're looking for a operations manager. They're going to key in any of those words that are the areas of expertise of an operations manager, and they're going to put those in a search. And the individuals that show up in their list are those that had the keywords. And even if you have that skill set, if you don't have the keywords in there, you're not going to end up on that list. So keywords are so important. I mentioned earlier about my situation about my first contract opportunity as a career coach came because of LinkedIn, and this is exactly why. In my headline, I had job search, career management. So this individual that found me was able to see that right in my headline. So they are critical to your visibility. It is, I like to call it the beacon. It's, hi, I'm here, okay? And the trick is to discover those keywords is to look at sites. For example, here I'm going to recommend Indeed.com, where you might be familiar with the job postings sites that, like Monster is one that was more prominent. Indeed.com is basically a compiler where it goes out to various sites, and so it has the largest collections, the largest collection of job postings in the world. And so that's why I like to recommend Indeed.com. And so the best recommendation I have to discover your keywords is to do research on job descriptions. What are those titles you're targeting? And I like to recommend getting 5 to 10 job descriptions where you've looked at them and you've been able to determine what are those typical keywords that keep showing up. In addition to that, Indeed.com has a fairly new feature called Job Trends. And to get to that, the website is Indeed.com/job trends. And that gives you the ability to analyze those keywords and see from their perspective, since they've got this large collection of job postings, if those truly are today relevant. Okay, I'll give you an example. I had a client, now this was on a resume, but it can still apply in LinkedIn, and she was applying for opportunities and she wasn't getting interviews. So when that happens, I always go back to, okay, let's check in on your keywords, because something must be off. We know that you're marketable. We just need to see what's going on. She was targeting marketing roles, and it just so happened, literally this seemed to happen overnight, where what was online marketing, the new term was digital marketing. And so just by changing her resume and LinkedIn to get the word digital in instead of online, she started getting interviews. Okay. So let's dig in a little bit on how you use the Job Trends feature. And I'm going to start with using the example of, let's say you have your project management professional certification, but this can be used for any keyword, but we're just going to start there. Okay. And what you want to do is you want to figure out what are those best keywords to use and see what Indeed Job Trends comes up with. So you would type the terms you want to compare in the box at the top of the page. And when Indeed Job Trends comes up, it will have one already in there. You just want to remove that and put in those keywords that you're looking at. Okay, so for example, with the certification that we just mentioned, these are the keywords that you could put in to see what's trending, to see the way it's being referred to. So you've got PMP certified, certified PMP, and PMP certification is cut off there. And then you'll click on that little blue rectangle, Find Trends. And then Indeed Job Trends will do its assimilation, and it will come back with a graph that will show you how often those terms have been used in the past several years. And this can be really helpful and give you an idea of what those keywords are. So for each search term, Indeed will assign a unique color. So you see the 3 here, and you're able to see which one has the most relevancy, okay? PMP certification in this case, although it does have its up and down, but if you look at the other 2, they're almost flat. So right there, knowing that can make a big difference. And you can see how refined it can be, because basically you're using the same words there, but that is the phrase. So back to that graph again, just to give you an idea, it does look like in that case that the keyword peaked in 2012, so that does give you some idea. It could be that certification is not as relevant at this point, but it really does help you to get an idea of what could be relevant, if it's something that's still required, that type of thing. So I've gone into some detail already on this, but this goes into more detail about looking at those particular lines and how you can analyze it, just so you can see it visually. The next thing to talk about is networking. That really is what LinkedIn is all about. Once you have your profile, and the profile can be organic, you might change it depending on trends, depending on a new target, but the idea is to use it for networking. And you may have heard the term hidden job market, or I like to refer to it as the proactive job market. But networking truly is the most effective way to get a job, and that is because you are going to separate yourself from the hundreds, possibly even more, that are applying for those published positions online. The hidden job market basically is stating that it gives you an inside advantage. You become a known candidate, because at the end of the day, people hire people they know, trust, and like. And the only way that can happen is building relationships through direct interaction. And LinkedIn is a great way to do this. And I always like to share, for those that are out there like me that are introverted, that this makes it so much easier. I'm actually in the middle, but I found that for me, going to a networking event with 200 people is not my idea of a good time. But through LinkedIn, I can develop relationship one by one by one. And so it really does make it easier. So it is about you building connections, and then that leads to online job applications in a couple ways through LinkedIn, and we'll talk about that, of actually applying there, but as well building your network and being aware of opportunities that you might not have been aware of before. So the first thing to do that effectively is to personalize your invitations to connect. And it just recently changed on LinkedIn that for a while, and I'm not up to speed yet on the app because literally they just updated the design a couple weeks ago, that you used to be able to just click invite without even putting a message in. But I notice now, at least on the online version, you have to put a message in. And so experts and research supports that you're going to have a far greater chance of having your invitations accepted if you take the time to write something personal. And beyond that, that's how you build relationships. I had a client one time that got really excited because they had all these connections and they wanted to go ahead and send out this mass mailing to all these connections and didn't get any bites, if you will, didn't get any interaction. And so we talked about how that, there is, yes, you want to have enough numbers out there, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But at the same time, it has to be quality. You want to build those personal relationships, and this is a good place to start. So the key components to doing that are to, if it is someone you can refresh them on how you met, how you found them. It could be that you have a shared connection. You could point out an article that they wrote. I've had individuals that have connected with me before that said, oh, I love that article and would love to be connected. It could be a targeted connection, meaning an individual that you discovered was in a position to potentially hire you in an organization and reach out to them in a strategic way to do that. You want to try to find something in common. And so if you look at their profile, for example, for me, I'm a military brat. So when I see someone that has a military background, I always point that out and just thank them for their service and let them know that my dad was a West Point grad. So whatever for you, they could be volunteer, look to see where they volunteered. It might be that you have the same alma mater. So just be on the lookout for those commonalities. And you want to be specific. Why are you wanting to connect? Now, there is a little subtlety here, because initially you want to make sure you're not being desperate and saying that you want a job. So I always recommend that you're wanting to create a mutual beneficial relationship. So whether, if it is, for example, a targeted connection, letting them know that you've specifically researched the company and feel like your background could be a fit and would love to be able to connect and discuss if they're willing. If it's someone that was a former colleague, you could share that since we both worked at ABC company, would love to stay in touch. So those are just a few examples. And then you want to be warm and polite when you end your invitation. So let's talk about being active versus being on LinkedIn. Now many people are on LinkedIn, and so that means basically that they have a profile. But as we've been talking about, LinkedIn is a very powerful tool. It's extremely robust, and there's so much more than what we're going to be able to go over in this webinar. But these tools and aspects of it that we're talking about today will, if you're actively utilizing it, make a huge difference. Okay, so let's talk about being active. Being active on your profile is basically checking in. And you'll see in the slide it talks about how experts have said you want to do this 3 times per day, but keep in mind that you want to start where you're starting. If you already have a full plate, try once a week. See how that goes. I always like to use the example that I have a brother-in-law that's a CEO. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. My brother-in-law lives up in the DC area, and he says, gosh, Michelle, I see you all the time on LinkedIn. Well, at that time, I was only posting every couple days. So people start to see you regularly, and that's back to that known candidate, okay? So checking in can look a couple different ways. It really is about genuine engagement, really connecting in different ways so that people can put the name to the face and really begin to recognize you, okay? So there are different schools of thought on this, but I recommend that you make lots of connections. You want to make that net as wide as you possibly can. And then from there, you can be strategic about your networking. But the more you're connected, the more opportunities you will be to connect with someone that may be what they consider a second tier that you wouldn't have been connected to otherwise. So you'll see the list here. This is a good place to start. If you don't know where to start, here's a good place to start. And I always recommend set a goal initially to get 25 contacts. Okay, And I would suspect out of that list, they have friends, former coworkers, neighbors, members of groups you're in, college alumni. I bet 25 should be pretty easy. Okay. There is a threshold number. If you get to 100 or above, that opens you up to even more possible connections. Okay. So specifically ways, once you have those connections and you have a network that you can start being active as opposed to just on LinkedIn, are updating your status. We mentioned once a week, whether you've got a project that you're working on, adding a technical or professional skill, people can see that. When you add to a group, people see that. Like Facebook, LinkedIn has a wall, and you will see the feed. And as you're looking at different updates, if it's something that you can identify with, you can like that. And like I said, this doesn't have to take much time. Honestly, that's what I do a lot of times, is I don't have time to comment all the time, but I will just click on like, and people see me. Okay. Endorsements and recommendations, ask for and give those. So you can do that a couple ways. You can either reach out via LinkedIn or email or a phone call and say, hey, would you be willing to endorse me or recommend me? The endorsements are basically where you've listed skills and individuals can endorse you. A recommendation is where an individual writes something about you, and that is associated with their name and picture, and so that can be very valuable too. When you're asking for one of these, you want to make sure you give details about why you're asking. Okay, and I like to recommend paying it forward. Ask and, as it says, give as well, and that will make a difference. If you're a writer, if you're drawn to that, you can also write content out there, and LinkedIn has made that pretty easy. Okay, I can see I'm getting so excited I'm not allowing time for questions, so I'm going to go through the rest fairly quickly. But you can get into various industry-related followings. There are thought leaders out there, companies, etc. Okay. I alluded to this, but you can search and apply for jobs posted on LinkedIn. And so again, having those keywords is helpful. And then this gives you the opportunity to set up regular searches that you can go and look out for. It gives you, after you apply, where you match the skills, and that can help you to understand if you need to update your keywords. It gives you contact information of the poster, connections that work there, again, building that network. And there is an app for the smartphone that you can use. So we already talked about the targeted companies and the industries, and that's where you can focus on those that you're interested in. Groups. Get into groups. That allows you to connect with recruiters or other individuals that may be in a position to hire you. I do have one client for sure. I know she ended up getting her job through a group. Someone in a company found her and wanted her skill set. And there was one individual that was sharing that the 425% of page views were the result of one individual where she started and participated in a few group discussions, meaning that she was in those groups and people were going to look at her profile. Okay, so check out what's happening in the group before becoming active. And sorry, I'm realizing, like I said, I got so excited earlier on that I'm getting near the end here. And with groups, you can join discussions, you can start your own discussion, and I feel like that's all pretty self-explanatory there. But again, it goes back to people hire people they like. So now, last but not least, the list of 10. And we talked about all of these. Professional photo, the right keywords, job trends, networking, the personalized invitations, regularly checking in, searching and applying for jobs, the LinkedIn targeting companies and industries. We didn't get to go into that as much. Joining groups, and then either joining a group or starting discussions in groups. So Mickey, I will let you take it from here. I know we are right at time.
Well, thank you, Michelle. We had a couple of quick questions that we can address. Louise wanted to know, what would you suggest to do if you're applying for different kind of jobs? Michelle, do you want to answer that, or do you want me to?
I'd be happy to. So Louise, I think if I'm understanding your question, you mean targeted titles. And that can be a little tricky. I always recommend that my clients pick what is you put them in priority order. So if you know that one is going to be most likely where your experience and background are, I would focus your keywords on that and then just filter in a few others.
Right, I definitely agree with that. And one other question Georgia is asking, how do I start finding keywords? What words to search in the job trends?
So that's a good question, Georgia. I recommend that you start with job descriptions. So think about the jobs that you're considering and putting those into a Google search first, and get a good feel with the job descriptions if you're not sure before you even go to the job trends. That will make a difference.
Right, I completely agree. And I think, Georgia, what you can do is just once you start reading for a few different job descriptions for certain positions, you'll see words repeating themselves. And those would be keywords you want to have in your profile, in your resume. And other things is to think about what's unique about you, whether it's a certain certification or something else. And then you can start putting that in to see what's the best way to describe it. Okay, so we are done today, and thank you everybody for joining us. And I hope you come back to I'm Back at Work and join some of our other webinars. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, everyone.